Hi, I'm Simon K. Jones, and this is the audio version of my newsletter. And here in Norwich today, it is absolutely tipping it down, and there's thunder and lightning and all sorts. So if any of that's showing up on the audio, I apologise. Although maybe it'll just set the tone and be nicely atmospheric. Anyway, today I'm talking about judging your own work and the risky business of editing yourself. And this came about because last week I was at a literature event, which was programmed and produced by a bunch of teenagers. And I found myself talking to a 16-year-old about the challenge of judging your own work. He said, "It's really hard to know if what I'm writing is any good. It's basically impossible to know if anything is good until I put it in front of an audience." And for context, he just read out a piece to the gathered audience. They'd had this year-long program of kind of upskilling in the literature sector, and I taught a workshop for the group last year at some point, and this was their sort of big finale at the end of their studying, where they programmed their own event and did their own readings, and it was great. It was really cool. Anyway, this guy had just read a piece which was in fact very good, so hopefully he's now discovered that. But yeah, he had a point, and this is why professional editors exist. After all, books don't end up on shelves until they've been read by several people, and pulled apart and commented upon, red-penned and put back together again. Even after going through that process, an author still may not know for sure how their work will be received. We don't all have the luxury of editors even, especially in 2025 when literature and journalism are both experiencing major upheaval and budget squeezing. Increasing numbers of writers are self-publishing one way or another, including prominent authors and journalists who have abandoned the traditional publishing and broadcast worlds to set up independently. I publish this newsletter twice a week, including some new fiction, and don't have the budget to employ an editor. Some people may be like, yeah, I can tell, but let's just kind of skirt over that. The thing is, while it's almost impossible to know whether audiences will like something that I've made, I do try my best to ensure a decently high level of quality. This requires me to be as self-critical as possible and rely on my instincts. So here's where the problem is. Human brains have advanced autocorrect features. I'm no scientist, but this is presumably the way brains are able to take the fragmented information about the world as provided by eyes, ears, nose and touch and turn it into something useful. Our eyes see the world upside down and often don't tell the entire truth. The images captured through our lenses are under constant interpretation. Mike Souden over on Everything is Amazing, which is an excellent newsletter. He has all sorts of stuff on optical illusions that are well worth digging out. Go and use the search over there. But the point is, our brains are always filling in the gaps and helping us out. This is really useful for surviving the day and navigating the world, making sure we don't fall in holes or walk into giant spikes. But it's really bad for writers. We know what we intended to write. Whether you're writing freehand or via a keyboard, we know precisely which words and letters we meant to use and how to spell them. Even if we got it wrong on the page or hit the wrong keys in a few places, it's okay. Our brains will usefully autocorrect the mistakes and present us with the perfect, idealized version of our creation, the version we thought we made in the first place. As a result, it's bizarrely difficult to spot typos in your own work. Read someone else's writing and typos will jump out. They will seem to be written in a different font and double-sized given how obvious they are. Mistakes jump up and down, waving frantically for your attention, but only when you read someone else's work. And of course, the reverse is that applies when other people read your work. This makes it very difficult to edit and assess our own writing, which is what we actually want to do. Your brain is lying to you, presenting a false picture of what is really there on the page. If only we could temporarily disable some of the auto-corrections. So in a professional capacity, this has been easier for me. When writing copy at work, in the day job, there's usually a range of people who will read through the words before they go public. Most organisations have some sort of proofing system built in. Writing my fiction or this newsletter doesn't have such luxuries. I've had to learn to produce decent copy, often without the benefits of an editor or proofer. Having to write fast and accurate copy in the day job, though, especially in my early career, certainly, I think, helped to train those muscles. And there are some simple techniques that can really help. So number one is use a spell check. And this is really obvious. but it's surprising how often misspellings show up in articles and newsletters online, even in professional mainstream publications. Grammatical errors are one thing, being harder to spot and sometimes open to interpretation, but just plain typos or incorrect spelling is really easy to catch these days. Personally, I don't use Grammarly or similar tools. I know a lot of people swear by them, but I'm uncomfortable with an automated system weighing in on the actual structure of my work. I would rather my writing be grammatically a bit off, but be uniquely mine, than use a tool to sand down all the edges so that I sound like generic professional copy. I mean, absolutely use the tools which help you, but do be cautious to retain what makes your writing yours, even if that means being technically slightly incorrect. In the age of AI, there are two options really. You sound like you, quirks and weirdness included, or you sound like everything else. AI is the great homogenizer, and to stand out from the grey goop requires being quirkier and more idiosyncratic. So next up we have moving the text to a different form. This is a great way to improve quality overall. If you've typed the words on a computer, try printing it out, or reading on a tablet or a phone, just a different screen. Anything that shifts it into a different format, a different shape. This seems to break the brain's autocorrect and makes errors much easier to spot. Perhaps the most useful version of move to a different form is reading aloud. One of the earliest tips I learned was that reading your work aloud was a good way to assess it. But this advice was often linked to dialogue. If words are supposed to be spoken, whether in an actual script or just within prose, reading out loud can reveal odd patterns that make it sound unrealistic or awkward or make it difficult to say. The advice applies to any text, though. Around the start of 2024, I started recording audio voiceovers for this newsletter, like this one you're listening to right now. And I'm pretty sure it resulted in a general increase in writing quality and technical precision. The idea behind recording voiceovers was for accessibility and convenience for readers/listeners, but it's developed into a vital part of my post-production. It's the final editing pass before I hit publish. I'm often editing and rewriting sections during the audio recording. In my fiction, it's often when I spot continuity errors or plot holes that can be fixed last second. And just to be clear, like in the recording of this voiceover, I have made numerous fixes and changes and tweaks and adjusted bits and pieces. It helps that recording is so easy and affordable these days. I've got a separate article all about that over on the newsletter. So most of what I've talked about relates to technical quality rather than artistic or aesthetic qualities, which is fine. Like, technical polish is easier to achieve and comes first in a way. It's very rules-based. Sorting that stuff out kind of clears the decks. It keeps things tidy so that we can then focus in on the more exciting job of crafting something with intent. This is where we stray from my area of expertise. There are many more qualified tutors than me for how to become a better writer, but I will share one tip, which is the useful sentences check. But first I'm going to drink this coffee. Nice coffee. Flat white, obviously, but it definitely helps when you have the lights on, despite it being the middle of the day in July, and the rain is pouring down outside and the whole world has gone slightly grey. So, especially in fiction, I try to make sure that every sentence is contributing something. Every sentence should be doing at least one thing, revealing something about a character, moving the plot forward, exploring the core themes of the story, creating atmosphere, and so on. If a sentence can do more than one of those things at the same time, then all the better. It sounds obvious, but it's very easy to fill a manuscript with waffle without realising. In non-fiction, this tends to manifest itself in pointless opening paragraphs. I've lost count of the number of times I've simply deleted the first paragraph of an essay. First paragraphs are often inadvertent warm-ups, when we are finding our way into the subject being discussed. Often the second or third paragraph of a first draft is actually the better opening. You need to either delete the first paragraph or even just swap it so that it comes later on. It's very weird. No matter how much I write, and I've been writing for decades now, I still fall into this trap. So to get back to the student's observation from the start that I mentioned. So if you remember, they said, it's basically impossible to know if anything is good until I put it in front of an audience. And in some ways, this will always be true. especially in figuring out what's going to resonate with people. I've written articles and stories which I think are going to be huge, only to see them fade into total obscurity. It's the essays I cobbled together last minute in a hurry that are the ones that often do better. It's hard to predict. That said, when we're 4 years old, we think everything we do is amazing, right? We draw a stick man and think it's the best art has to offer. And intriguingly, it's not obvious to us how our efforts differ from the Mona Lisa. As we get older, we begin to recognise that gap and become more critical of our own work. Sometimes you see this awareness failing. When you used to see tone-deaf people in the X Factor auditions on TV, clearly unable to sing, with no talent whatsoever, but convinced of their own brilliance, determined that they're going to win this entire competition. That's an example of not being able to recognise the reality of their current skill set. Being self-aware as an artist is about recognising where we are and where we'd like to be. Identifying the distance between the two is what motivates us and also points the way forward. That self-critical eye can be trained over time. The 4-year-old has no ability to assess their own work. A 14-year-old has read more books, watched more movies, heard more music, and is therefore better positioned to identify what makes something good. Even without formal training, any artist with a naturally critical eye will be picking up on the fundamentals. The more experience we get, the easier it becomes. That's where that debate from the last couple of weeks about how many books should a serious writer read becomes kind of relevant. Reading a lot makes it easier to anchor ourselves as writers. Watching a lot of films will help a new filmmaker understand the language of cinema. Gaining experience makes it easier to spot that gap between reality and ambition. Studying an art form at school or university or online can sharpen our critical skills. The gap will always be there, and that's fine. After all, if it wasn't, it would either mean a lack of ambition or an overestimation of our skills, and that would be the real tragedy. One day maybe I'll be able to hire an editor and stop worrying about all this, but not today. Okay, thanks for listening. You can find loads more like this over on the newsletter or check out the podcast feed. You can find me at simonkjones.substack.com, where you can also leave comments and disagree. I'll see you over there.